This is continuing coverage. The Black Swan murder trial of Ashley Benefield from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Now back to the courtroom.
All right, State, call your first witness.
Tommy Benefield. Tommy.
All right, members of the jury, there may be times where it may be a minute or two when witnesses are coming in or we're reconfiguring the courtroom. You're going to spend a lot of time sitting during this trial, so if you want, during these breaks, if you want to stand up, please feel free to do so, kind of stretch a little bit. There's not enough room for yoga poses and calisthenics, but sometimes it just helps to stand up on your feet and move your back a little bit. Please feel free to do that if you need to.
You solemnly swear or affirm you're about to give a true, the whole truth.
I do. Sorry, follow me, please. Hello, sir.
Judge.
My name is Judge White. I'm going to be presiding over this case. As you take yourself up a chair, get about 12 to 15 inches from that microphone. It adjusts up, down, left, right, however you need it. Speak in a loud, clear voice, we'll hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Suzanne.
Please state your name.
Tommy Douglas Benefield, Jr.
Can you spell those?
Yes, ma'am. Tommie, middle name Douglas, Douglas. Last name Benefield, Benefield, and Jr.
And what was your relationship to Doug?
I'm Doug's first cousin.
How close are you and Doug?
Doug and I were completely attached, connected all the way through his adult life at varying times, semi-annually, certainly quarterly, though the whole entire adult life.
Okay. And how are you employed?
I'm currently in Atlanta, Georgia, and I run a flight school in Vero Beach, Florida. It's a week, full-time job.
Okay. And
Yes, put me into the Navy. I was a Navy pilot off air. And Doug stayed with me in the months prior to him going into the Navy. He went through aviation officer candidate school, went through flight school, and then flew for 3 years and 2 deployments off aircraft carriers like I did. Same aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz, as a matter of fact.
okay. How old was Doug Benefield when he died?
All right, he was 5 years younger than me. I'm 68 now. That was 4 years ago, 64. He was 59, I believe.
About how tall was Doug?
5'9", 5'10" at the most.
Approximately how much did he weigh at the time?
My guess is 160, 165. He was slender and fairly small for a male.
Okay. And before Doug moved to Florida, where did he live?
Before he moved.
Before he moved down here to Bradenton, Florida, where did he live?
Okay,
before
I'm
that?
sorry. I had to pick a year at that point. I'm sorry. He had a home all the way up until his death in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, just north of Charleston. 701 Preservation Place was the address.
Okay. And he lived at that address before moving to Bradenton, Florida, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And then he rented the house out when he moved to Bradenton for visitation of their daughter.
Okay.
The house, multiple years, Doug, as a day, that's, yes, died of a undiagnosed heart ailment, cardiac arrest.
Hold on.
It's not qualified.
Lack of qualifications?
Yes.
Overruled on that basis.
Was Renee Eva Benefield's mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you say that date again? Was 2015 that she died?
I believe it's December 2nd, but I may have the day off, but not the month of 2015.
2015. And I want to ask you now, switch to Ashley. So about how long after Renee died did Doug meet Ashley?
9 months.
When did you first meet Ashley?
I met Ashley in the spring of 2017. I believe the date was either March 14th or April 14th.
And did you know about Ashley before you met her?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How did your meeting come about?
I was flying for Southwest Airlines as a captain at the time. They changed my schedule like they do many times in the airline world, and I ended up not overnighting in Baltimore, Maryland, and they sent me to Charleston, South Carolina. Because I was going to Charleston, I texted Doug and said, hey, I'll be in to Charleston tonight. I'd like to have dinner, and he said, great. Text.
Sustained.
During your conversations, did he mention the name Ashley?
In the second text chain, which is entered,
Sustained.
I'm asking because...
I can answer the question, ma'am. When I arrived in Charleston, I texted Doug, and his text to me specifically was,
And you can't speak about what Doug said to you.
okay.
But during the text messages, did he indicate to you there was a female involved?
Yes, that's the first mention of Ashley to me, that we were not going to have dinner at the airport, and that I was to take Uber up to Mount Pleasant to meet them.
Okay. And was that at their house?
That was at Doug's house, yes, ma'am, 701 Preservation Place.
Doug's house at the time. And how long were you with them, the two of them together?
4 to 5 hours. We started at the house. We ended up going back to my hotel, getting a piece of medical technology, medical device that was a master trainer in that device. We had dinner together at a pizza restaurant across from the hotel, and then went back to my room in the hotel, the three of us, and certainly 4 to 5 hours that day.
And during this time, did you have multiple conversations with both of them?
We had conversations about everything, especially about how they met, starting at the house, ending at the hotel.
What did Ashley say about how they met?
She talked about how they met at a political event, a meeting, where Doug and his business investors were...
Defendant's statement.
Yeah, overruled.
You can go ahead.
Both Ashley and Doug told me about how they met the first night at a political meeting, how Ashley had reached out to him before that meeting. They showed me text messages between them for the 10 days between the first meeting and her second meeting with him up in Charleston, Mount Pleasant. They talked about how they had mutual interests, mutual alignment, how they were looking for the same thing in a relationship. They talked about, Ashley talked specifically about her fibromyalgia and pain associated with her ballet dancing days. Ashley talked about her mother, her upbringing, about her father, about the separation there.
Okay.
Do you have an objection?
Yes.
And the basis?
Here's,
It's my understanding this is the defendant's statement.
Yes.
All right, overruled.
Okay. Let me stop you there. So she said that her and Doug met at a political event.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at the time that you were meeting with them, were they married?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Ashley indicate to you when they got married or how long they had been married?
Yes, ma'am. 13 days from first meeting.
That they got married 13 days after they met?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Ashley indicate where they got married?
Yes, ma'am.
Where was that?
That was in Mount Pleasant or Charleston. Doug's best friend at the time, Tripp, married them.
Okay. Did Ashley ever discuss with you that she carried a gun?
Yes.
And what did she say about that?
She said that on their initial meeting, in the political meeting, that she and Doug's traveling partner in business went outside of Secret Service people, and she showed him the gun she was carrying at that event in her bra.
And she talked to you about this during your meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I want to jump forward a little bit, but did you have any conversations that night about them wanting to have a child, or was that a different time?
I don't remember us talking about it that first night, no, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember a conversation with Doug and Ashley, specifically Ashley, about them wanting a child?
I believe it was later in the late spring, the next time that I visited with them.
Okay. And to your knowledge, could Doug have children?
He had had a vasectomy after having his daughter with Renee, his longtime wife.
Did Ashley?
I'm sorry, so no. He
Okay.
couldn't have children.
Did Ashley speak about that in front of you, Ashley and Doug together, or Ashley separate about the vasectomy?
They did when they were discussing having Doug have a vasectomy reversal. Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
And to your knowledge, did that reversal ultimately go through?
Yes, ma'am, and I believe Ashley actually paid for it on a credit card. They talked about that.
Okay. And ultimately, she became pregnant?
Yes, 3 months after the vasectomy reversal, she became pregnant. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did they end up, I'm going to skip a little bit forward now.
Yes, ma'am.
Did they end up having a wedding reception?
They did. I believe it was June of 2017. I was single parenting at the time, and I wasn't able to attend, but it was in Charleston, South Carolina, at the home of one of Doug's business partners.
Okay. You mentioned something about ballet dancing, so I'm going to ask you about that. In your meetings and discussions with Ashley, did she indicate she was interested in the ballet?
She spoke about the fact that she had been a ballet dancer, that she had performed in, I'll call them shows, back, I believe, in Maryland, where she grew up. And by the time that I first met Ashley, they had formed the ballet company called the American National Ballet in Charleston. And they were, at the time that I first met her, they were working on getting that ballet company up and running.
Okay. And was this going to be a large endeavor?
Several $1 million, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Up to 40 dancers were hired. Yes, ma'am, large endeavor.
Okay. And do you know what Doug's role was in that? In your discussions with Ashley, did you find out what Doug's role was in
Yeah,
that?
Doug and Ashley talked about it on the first night I met her, about how they founded the ballet, how Doug did the online limited liability corporation work, founded the name, resurrected that name, how they worked together to try to build a ballet diverse and open to more than body size, body shape, body color.
And how did it?
A number of Doug's partners and Doug himself invested money. They had a major, let's say, arts benefactor in Charleston, is a personal injury lawyer who was going to be the primary major donor. In Doug's case, Doug was working on very advanced technologies and patents at the time, and in his case, he didn't have any savings or cash in the bank, so he sold his future stock grants and options to other investors to put his own money in, about $100,000 in his case.
So while this ballet was in development or launching, did Ashley ultimately become pregnant? I know you said she became pregnant several months later, but I'm just trying to get a timeline.
Yes, ma'am. So in February of 2017 are the records and what they told me about founding it. I met her in maybe a month or two after that on that Charleston overnight. They held the first ballet event, and I was invited in May of 2017. Once again, single parent, I wasn't able to attend. She got pregnant in July, and we talked about that multiple times. And the next month in August was the large launch, which me, my business partners, my veteran friends, supporters of Doug, all went to Charleston for that major launch in August. It was at a place, I'm sorry.
And at that time, was Ashley pregnant in August?
She was pregnant. I don't remember if she knew or not. It was
Okay.
1 month after the pregnancy was Emerson was conceived.
And at some point, did Ashley move away from the South Carolina home?
Yes, ma'am. We had the August ballet big launch. 2 weeks later, Doug moved Ashley down to Ashley's mother's home in Lakewood Ranch. Drove down one day, dropped her off, and drove back the next day. That's late August.
And what was the understanding, what was Ashley's understanding of why she was moving and what was going on?
In text conversations and personal conversations with Ashley.
Defendants.
It's going to be the defendant's statements.
Can we approach her?
Yes.
Okay, so I believe we were talking about the reason that Ashley went to Florida.
Yes, ma'am.
So in your discussions with Ashley, either text or in person or on the telephone, did she indicate to you that she was going to Florida because she was sick
That
and
was, that was the initial indication, yes, ma'am.
and her mother could better take care of her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Throughout the time that you saw Doug and Ashley together, how did Doug act?
In particular on the opening night and all the way through their relationship. Opening night, totally in love, both of them in love with each other. Doug was always very respectful. He was very, very respectful with her in front of me, both that initial night and then the next weekend, I believe in May, that I spent down in Sarasota, Bradenton with them. Every time he was respectful of her. They were in love. They never showed anything in front of me other than caring for each other.
That was going to be my next question. So did you see anything other than that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross. Mr. Taylor, as I've said before, you're free to use the podium if you prefer to cross from table. Yes, sir.
Morning, Mr. Benefield.
Good morning, Mr. Taylor.
You were a naval pilot, correct?
Navy pilot, yes, sir.
And I think you mentioned the training that you had briefly, correct?
I went through extensive training all my 30-year career, yes, sir.
Okay. Some of that training included close quarters combat, did it not?
No, sir, never.
No hand-to-hand
No, sir.
training at all?
No, sir.
Do you remember having a conversation where you related information about close quarters combat?
Yes, sir. I was in charge. I was the senior.
Do you remember that conversation
Which one, sir? I don't know which
about
one you're
close
speaking
quarters combat?
about. If it was in perspective of me running security and self-defense training for my airline, not the Navy.
You received no such training in the Navy?
No, sir, never.
Did Doug admit to you firing the gun in the kitchen of their home?
Can we approach?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield, do you recall that Ashley had left your cousin Doug in the fall of 2017?
Yes, sir.
Specifically September 18th of 2017.
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that date and the events.
Do you recall writing to Ashley Benefield in a text in May of 2018, "I'm a fan of yours"?
Hearsay.
It's his cousin, September 18th of 2017. Were you a fan of Ashley in May?
I don't remember specifically, but it may have been in our phone, text messages from January through June, possibly.
You expressing support for her?
Support for her story of the case, yes, sir.
Yeah. And did you tell her, in fact, at one point, she married the wrong Benefield? That she married the wrong Field?
Relevant.
Thank you. So, Mr. Benefield, after expressing support for this Benefield,
Additional reasons, sir.
do you know the reason Ashley gave your cousin Doug as to what him?
From,
Well, I'm not going to.
is it being offered for the truth? I mean,
Yeah, it's not being offered. I'm not going to go into this. I just want to know if you can answer. Did Doug share with you the reasons why she left him?
He shared two different reasons.
Yeah. All right. So several following that you're a fan of her, that she
Remember that specific text, months of open communication.
all right. Like in recollection, Mr. Ron,
yes.
that refresh recollection as to whether or not,
It does not say anything about my benefit.
does it say,
Sir, has that about identifying it? We need to lay.
Mr. Is that communication you share as Benefield,
I believe it's unaltered.
and it's between you and Miss, and it's accurate, is it not?
I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Objection.
Yeah, approach.
Exchange.
Yes, sir.
Would you tell us, having refreshed or not, tell us what your response was to Ashley's text?
This is 6. You want me to just focus on
Just tell us
one
what your
line?
Just tell us what your response was to Ashley's text, your recollection having been refreshed.
As in the text.
Benefield, please tell us what your response to Ms. Benefield was now that your recollection is refreshed.
There are multiple on the page, sir.
Mr. Benefield, I think you know what I'm referring to. Would you please answer my question?
I would like to answer as it pertains to what she said.
I didn't ask you what she said, Mr. Benefield. I asked you to please tell us your recollection having been refreshed. You said.
Would you like me to read that?
Object, do not need to be reading from this document.
Hey, would you please take the jury room? If you could give us 5 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Remember, please don't begin your discussions and deliberations amongst yourselves. You can contact people, but don't talk about the case with anyone else, and don't research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about. Excuse the hallway.
Yes, sir.
Discuss the questions that have been asked of you with anyone,
Yes, sir.
including the attorneys.
Yes, sir.
And you're not to let anybody talk to you about anything that's going on inside the courtroom.
Yes, sir.
We're on a break.
Yes, sir, I will do that. Should I leave the paper here?
Yes, sir, leave that there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When we began this portion of the discussion, question was, did you tell married the wrong person, the wrong Benefield? And I said, here's no exception. I found that it didn't provide impeachment or consistent state. What I did allow was him to testify as to his then existing mental, physical, or emotional conditions, or with the question being, feel that she had married the wrong Benefield. There was then the messages that I don't know what the substance of them was, but where we were was my understanding and what I defending to refer witnesses' recollection. And what I have said is it sounded like it started to morph into some mix of impeachment and reflection and some elements of introducing a past recollection recorded. And that's where we're at. So, state your objection.
My objection, first of all, the predicate has been laid. Has not. What the question is, other than paper, which is a collection, and either past recorded or something of that nature. I think we're commingling the two different things, and if it refreshes his recollection, then he can be asked that question without reading the document. I of the document because it is extrinsic evidence if it's being used for impeachment. I do not believe his state of mind is relevant to a material issue in this case. I think the defense is trying to say that it goes to bias, but I'm not quite sure how that fits into it. So my objection would be it's improper refreshing recollection, it's improper impeachment, it's also improper prior recorded recollection, and I would object to that being testified about.
Your response, sir?
Yes. So, as succinctly as I can, Your Honor, he's a creep. He acknowledged being a creep, and the jury will conclude he's a creep. It goes directly to his character and his bias. And that's why, after he said, yes, it was accurate, I recall it, he cannot bring himself to say it. And the reason he can't bring himself to say it is because he knows that all these women on the jury are going to know exactly what he was referring to. So I am trying to impugn his credibility after listening to everything that he had to say to set up the state's position about how this relationship was so lovey-dovey between Miss Benefield and Douglas Benefield, and what a wonderful relationship it was. Here, we now have this witness very begrudgingly admitting that after Miss Benefield leaves Douglas Benefield, and she leaves the letter, which I know the court has seen because I attached it as an earlier exhibit to a motion, he's still supporting her. And he's not only supporting her, but he's telling her she married the wrong Benefield. Now, in my world, Your Honor, based upon the rules of evidence, I am entitled to go after his credibility, which he has put in question by virtue of taking the witness stand and becoming a witness. I did it the way the court wanted. I asked the magic question, does this refresh your recollection? He said it did. Now I want him to tell me, in response to my question, did you tell Miss Benefield she married the wrong Benefield? And he cannot bring himself to acknowledge it. He wants to talk about anything else but that. And I think, Your Honor, anything that I'm capable of showing where this witness, Doug Benefield's loving cousin, Tommy Benefield, where this witness showed his support for Ashley Benefield after she left Douglas Benefield, goes directly to his credibility. You can't get up there and testify to all of these things about how wonderful this relationship was, and then on cross-examination have to acknowledge that you were still saying you're a fan of Miss Benefield's after she leaves them. Knowing the reasons she left them, I intentionally didn't go into the reasons to try to be straight with the court, but now I'm attempting to impugn his credibility. And he knows it, Judge. He's looking at me like a deer in the headlights.
I'm going to allow you to respond. I previously mentioned about confining arguments to legal and factual bases. I am also going to direct both sides to refrain from vituperative ad hominem attacks. I don't think we need to resort to name calling. I think it's inappropriate and unprofessional to refer to a witness as a creep. All right. With that said, go ahead for your response.
The first thing, Judge, I don't know if you have the copy of the text message up there. If the defense could give it to you. Nowhere in there does it say she married the wrong Benefield. That is not what it says, first of all. And second of all, Tommy Benefield never said that anything about their relationship and the tenor of their relationship once she left. He said, when I saw them together, they looked fine. Just because that changes down the road and he knows they're having problems, I am unaware of how that affects his credibility. He can clearly see that they're having problems later on down the road. I don't see how the timing being different somehow makes him inconsistent and somehow that attacks his credibility or it shows his bias. If Mr. Taylor wants to ask him, were you aware that there were problems after that? Yes, I was aware of that. I mean, in Mr. Taylor's argument, he is impeaching the fact that Tommy Benefield saw them acting lovey to each other. If that wants to be impeached or explored, then ask Mr. Benefield if he saw them after that or knew that they were not lovey and having that type of relationship. I don't understand the relevance of these types of conversations. I think the defense tends to say everything is about bias, but it has to comport with the rules of evidence, and I would say that this does not.
All right, thank you both very much. So my ruling earlier was that these statements by Mr. Benefield towards the defendant were hearsay. I wasn't aware of any exception that would allow them. They appear to be offered for the truth of the matter that is asserted. So I didn't allow them on that grounds. What I allowed was the defense to ask, because there had been testimony by Tommy Benefield that they were always respectful to each other. You never saw anything except care for each other, and they were in love both ways. I think it is an impeachable question to ask, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? But it's not what he wrote, it's what he felt. That's where you're mixing apples and oranges, the defense is. The question that was presented to me was, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? You can answer yes or no. If there's then some extrinsic evidence that may impeach him on that point, I would then have to make a determination is that extrinsic evidence admissible or not? Because if it's a collateral matter that's not material, then as you well know, Mr. Taylor, you get the answer you get. Where we had an additional part of this analysis was the fact that there was a demonstrated lack of memory, because the answer was, I don't know, as opposed to, no, I didn't say that, or yes, I didn't feel that, yes, I did feel that. So then the path we started on was refreshing recollection. As I've mentioned before, and I mentioned pre-trial, I expect attorneys to know the differences between impeachment by a prior inconsistent statement, that's one path. Refreshing recollection is a second path, and introduction of past recollection recorded, which is a separate path. And the reason I'm sustaining the objection is because it started off with refreshing, does it refresh your memory, and then we got right back into the documents themselves, which I've already ruled were hearsay. So it's for impeachment purposes only. You can ask him about I allowed you to ask what his feelings were, but not to get into these documents themselves. I don't know how to say it any more clear than that.
So
if you're refreshing his recollection, then we're going to take that path.
yes, I believe I did that. I believe I refreshed his recollection, and he acknowledged that. So then my question was,
What did you say? And that gets back to the documents. If he says his memory is refreshed, you take the document back, or whatever the thing is that you use to refresh recollection is to be retrieved. And then the person testifies from their own personal knowledge.
so once he said that he recalls, I then asked him if he said that you married the wrong Benefield. That's what I said. I will be happy to go through that again, Your Honor. Now, did I leave the document there when I asked him that? Yes. I didn't feel it was necessary to take the document back, but after he acknowledged that his memory was refreshed, I asked him, did you say that she married the wrong Benefield? And that's where we were when Your Honor sent the jury out. He was trying to come to terms with how he was going to answer that. The other text, Your Honor, is just indicative of continued support for Ms. Benefield.
Sir, this doesn't say what you're asking him.
May I approach? Thank you, wrong Benefield. Ms. Benefield says, that's very cool. You should be so proud of what you were doing. His response is, thank you, wrong Benefield. What that means, Your Honor, what that suggests is, thank you, you should have been with me.
Sustained.
I assure you, Judge, that any female will draw that conclusion immediately.
That does not match what you're asking, sir. All right, are we ready to bring the jury back in? Do you want to treat this as your mid-morning break? You guys can take 5 minutes.
Can I take 5 minutes, please?
All right, am I going to be allowed to get an answer from him?
I've sustained the objection. All right, so we'll take...
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify your ruling. It's my understanding that you said he could ask how he felt.
Correct. The last objection was the questions were going to, what did you write, what did you say in your text messages?
Right.
Sustained.
And then, okay, thank you.
So we're clear. Did you feel she married the wrong Benefield?
I've already ruled you could ask that question.
All right.
You ready to bring the jury back in, state,
Yes.
defense?
Ready.
All right, bring them in. Oh, yeah, as you're going to bring them out, go and bring Mr. Benefield back in. State, where's Mr. Benefield?
I will find him.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize.
It took a long time for him to get here earlier too, so we just need our witnesses ready to go.
They did a room for the state attorney's office witnesses down there, because the press has this room.
The rest of them are outside, Judge. We
Sorry?
have several witnesses outside to see how far we get before allowed.
Judge, that was why, because our witness room is taken.
All right, Mr. Benefield, come on back in and resume the witness stand. You'll recall that you are under oath.
Yes, sir.
Sir, as we took that break, did anybody attempt to approach you or speak with you about your testimony, the evidence, or this case?
No, sir.
Did you speak with anyone about your testimony, the questions asked of you, or the evidence of this case?
No, sir.
All right. Let's go and bring the jury in. You all go ahead and have a seat. Whenever you find your spots, just sit on down. All right, everyone can have a seat. Members of the jury, during that break, did anybody discuss the case amongst yourselves, discuss the case with anybody outside of the jury, or do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about? No. Everybody says no. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Benefield, when we last were assembled, we were waiting for you to answer the question whether you felt Ashley had married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir, I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep a communication open between us.
Now, we've established that you were aware that Ashley left Doug in September of 2017.
Yes, sir.
And we've also established that following that, you expressed your support of her.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I want to direct your attention specifically to the month of November of 2017. Were you aware of a domestic violence injunction that Ms. Benefield sought and obtained from South Carolina court?
Yes, sir, at that time.
And did you express to Ms. Benefield
Objection.
You can ask the question.
your support of her after she obtained that domestic violence injunction?
Sustained.
Did you support Ms. Benefield in November of 2017 following the issuance of a domestic violence injunction?
Not specifically about that, sir.
Do you recall expressing your support on Saturday, November 4th, 2017?
I don't remember that specifically, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield, I'm going to show you a document, see if this refreshes your recollection. areas that I check refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir, those appear to be my statements.
All right, the recollection having been refreshed, Mr. Benefield, on November 4th, following the issuance of the domestic violence injunction to Ms. Benefield, did you express your support to her?
There are two problems with your question for me, sir.
Would
I'm going to
you-
ask you,
Would you answer my question, and then you can certainly feel free to explain it?
I was unaware of I believe I was unaware of any result of any pending case in South Carolina at the time I texted that.
I thought you just told us you were aware.
I became aware after the fact. When the mutual protection order was entered, I found out about it after the fact, but I don't remember the date of that event as it relates to the November 4th.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
State, any redirect?
No.
Can this witness be released?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, can this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Sir, the prior restrictions that I placed upon you are removed.
Yes, sir, thank you.
State, call your next witness.
State calls Eva Benefield.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Judge White. I'm presiding over the case. Just make yourself comfortable in that chair. Get about 12 to 15 inches from the microphone. It does adjust up, down, left, and right as you need it. Actually, you're just fine right there. I think that's close enough.
Okay.
Speak in a loud, clear voice, and we'll hear everything. Go ahead.
Please state your name.
Eva Benefield,
How do you spell your first name?
EVA,
And how old are you now?
23.
What was your relationship to Doug Benefield?
He was my father.
And who was your mother?
Renee Benefield.
And we heard from the previous witness, she died, unfortunately, at some time before this case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When did you first find out about someone named Ashley Benefield?
It was August of 2016, about 9 months after my mom passed.
Okay. And how did you find out?
My dad was on the phone when he picked me up from school, and he had his phone on speaker, and they mentioned him having a girlfriend, and if he was going to bring his girlfriend to a conference that they had that weekend.
And was that the first time you had any information that there might have been a girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
I was 15.
At the time, were you upset with him about that?
No, I just told him that I trusted him, and if that's what made him happy, that I would be happy for him.
And about how long after that did you find out they were married?
It was 2 days after.
And how did you find out that they were married?
My dad came up into my room, and he said, "Eva, we need to have a chat downstairs with Ashley." She was at the house at the time, and I said, I don't think we need to. I understand that you're dating her and you're happy, but please just, give me my space a little bit. I don't want to have a conversation." And he said, "No, I think it's really important we do." And I said, "The only time that I would want to have a conversation with y'all is if you told me that you were going to propose." And when those words came out of my mouth, he told me that they were married.
Okay. So you found out they were married.
Yes.
Did Ashley eventually move into your house?
Yes.
And that was the house in South Carolina?
Yes, ma'am.
At the time, who all lived in the house? Just the three of you?
Yes.
How was their relationship together that you saw?
They were just with each other all the time. It was very lovey-dovey. They were very touchy-feely, PDA. Any event with school or extracurricular that I was in, they were together. They'd go grocery shopping together, go travel together. They never left each other's side.
Okay. And how did you and Ashley get along?
It was friendly at first.
Okay. You said it first?
Yes.
And then what happened?
Over time, she tried to reprimand me a little bit more and kind of step into a motherly role, and I did not like that because it was so short after my mom passed away.
Okay.
Relevance.
Sustained.
And in Ashley's interactions with you, or interactions that she had or disagreements that she had with your father, how did you observe her to act?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, it wasn't a good question. Whenever she had a disagreement with you, how would she act?
It was almost temper tantrum-like. It was...
Objection. Impermissible character evidence.
I'm sorry?
Character evidence.
Overruled.
Okay, so it was temper tantrum-like, and you didn't sound like you were finished. What were you saying?
She would go directly to my dad and tell him that I wasn't obeying.
Okay. And did her reactions to you seem to be on the level of the situation, or did she get more angry at the situation?
Usually they were overreactions over small things.
Okay. And how about interactions with your dad? Did you ever hear her argue with your father?
I heard her strongly voice her opinions over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, you said over and over and over again. Is that something that you heard on a regular basis, or something you only heard once?
It was on a regular basis.
Okay. And when she was voicing her opinions to your father, was he ever reacting to that?
No, he would just sit quietly and listen.
Did you ever see them fight?
No,
Verbally fight?
no,
Okay. Did you ever see them physically fight?
no.
How often would you say that Ashley's father would disagree within your hearing?
Never.
Okay. You said if Ashley was trying to get her point across, that she would go on and on about that?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't term that as a disagreement?
No.
Okay. What would you term that as?
My dad just listened to her voice her concerns.
Okay. Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever hear your dad do something or say something that was controlling to her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad get physical with her?
No.
No further questions.
Cross.
Yes. Good morning, Ms. Benefield.
Good morning.
We met previously at a deposition, correct?
Correct.
And I apologize to you for meeting you under these circumstances. I'm required to ask you a few questions based on the testimony that you've given us. You lived in the house at the time that Ashley and your father were first married.
Yes.
And you found out from your father that he had married Ashley when he introduced her to you.
It wasn't when I was first introduced. It was a day after.
So the day after, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So your mother had passed away approximately 8 months earlier?
9 months.
9 months earlier. And your father, with no advance knowledge, came and introduced you to his new wife.
Yes.
There was a hole in the ceiling of the kitchen in your home, correct?
Correct.
You know what that hole was, how it got there?
Objection. Calls for hearsay.
I don't know if it will or not.
I would prefer the question not be asked.
Okay.
Can we approach?
Yes.
So I think the question that was pending, Ms. Benefield, was, did you know how?
Objection, Judge.
Sustained.
Let me back up. You told us there was a hole in the ceiling of your kitchen.
Yes.
Was that hole in the ceiling of your kitchen, can you describe it?
It was small.
Small, kind of round?
Yes.
Consistent with an object?
Objection, speculation.
Let me finish the question.
Consistent with an object the size of a bullet?
Yes.
Overruled.
Were there holes in the drywall of your home?
There was one.
Was it from the closet?
No.
Outside to the drywall?
No.
Where was it?
It was near the kitchen.
Did you know how it got there?
Yes.
Was the hole consistent with the size of a fist?
Yes.
Was that hole patched?
Eventually.
Who patched it?
My father.
Did you know that your father studied close quarters defense in the Navy?
Yes.
And tell us what close quarters defense comprises.
Objection.
I'll allow it briefly so she can explain the basis of her knowledge.
Well, let me give the court a little better insight into this. Ms. Benefield, do you hold a black belt?
Yes.
And are you trained in defensive combat fighting?
Taekwondo.
Did you and your father often discuss different styles of defensive fighting?
We had the conversations when I was practicing, when I was
Okay.
10.
And tell us were you trained in close quarters defense?
Yes.
All right. Tell us what it entails.
In hand-to-hand combat.
Okay. And it's the type of hand-to-hand combat where if confronted by a weapon, rather than turning and run, you're trained as to how to remove the weapon from the other person's hands.
Well, you're told to first ask for no conflict, and then if they proceed, yes.
Yeah. In other words, your objective is to take the weapon away.
If there's a weapon involved, yes.
Were you aware that a domestic violence injunction had been issued by the court in South Carolina?
No.
Give me 1 second, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
One last question, Ms. Benefield. Was your dad fixated with Ashley?
I think they were fixated with each other.
Did you make a prior did you express at any time that your dad, your words, not mine, was fixated with Ashley?
I might have.
Give me just a moment, Judge. Do you remember having your deposition taken?
Yes.
Proper impeachment rejection.
Well, I need page and line, and I don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, I was just first asking her the question. Do you remember sitting for a deposition?
Yes.
Let me pass to you this document and see if it refreshes your recollection.
Can we approach, please? Judge, may we approach?
Approach.
More continuing coverage is on the way. The Black Swan murder trial of Ashley Benefield from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Press subscribe now.